Welcome back. This is part 2 of going over my decision-making process as I write the first draft of a story. In part 1, we talked about the things I wanted to happen in the story and the rules that I set in place because of those things. And I talked about it so much that we even almost got to the very first sentence of the story, but not quite. In part 2 right now, I promise we're going to get to the first sentence, and we're even going to get to the second sentence. But there's actually a ton to unpack. So let's talk about the rules that I have in place right now to get to the first sentence of the story. So we know where and when we are, LA in 2010. We know who the point of view character is. We know what the point of view character's mission is. And his ambitious mission is to enact change to the point where he can provide housing to every unhoused veteran in Los Angeles at this time. And I also know that I want my sentences to feel original. I want to feel like I haven't read them before. So with these rules in place, let's dive into the first sentence of this story. So after all that yapping, do I actually have a first line? And absolutely, yes, I do. Let's write the first line of the story, and here it is. Venice Beach. Wait, that's it? Well, firstly, please remember that this is a first draft. I may end up cutting this sentence, but I do want to point out that even from the first sentence, we are following the rules we have in place. We're in LA. We don't yet know the year exactly, but we can still easily follow our rule. We haven't established all of these other things, but I will say, is the sentence fresh? Is starting a story that with just Venice Beach different? Do I think it's good yet? I don't know, right? I will have to see some of the sentences around it, but it's kind of fun. It declares a location as though a location is worthy of a declaration in and of itself. And it's also a little bit bold. So I thought it was kind of fun, but I don't yet know if it's good. So I can always change it, but this is just what I arrived at in my first draft. It's one possible way into the story. Now, what about the next sentence? Before we get into the next sentence, I want to think about what are some of the decisions that we might make. What are the options in front of us now that we have one sentence behind us? So let's look at what we've established so far. We have a sentence fragment, Venice Beach, in which all we've done is set a location. But we don't know what's going on there. We don't know if it's night. We don't know if it's day. We don't know the main character. There's so many things we don't know. We've just kind of established an iconic location, but it's still abstract. So what are some of the options of where we could go from here? Option 1 is we could describe the location. We could, for example, describe the sights or the sounds. We could describe the birds that we see, the type of people that we see. So if Venice Beach is this kind of abstract location right now, we could make it more concrete with specific descriptions of what we see in the moment. This would have the benefit of dropping us into scene very quickly. So that's one option. Another option might be transition to something else. And by transition away from Venice Beach, what I simply mean is don't go too deeply into the location, but start the scene itself. So this could be introducing our main character, or still describing something that we see, but making sure that we do it through the main character's point of view. So now I have a decision to make. But before we make this decision, I want to point out one of the most important fundamental principles of prose writing, of making decisions with words. And the fundamental I want to touch on here is knowing why you make a decision is more important than knowing the decision itself. And this might sound a little weird at first, but it's actually one of the most important concepts in prose writing. So I am about to write a second sentence to follow up Venice Beach. More important than knowing what the second sentence is why I choose to write that second sentence to begin with. Specifically, what factors am I considering as I write the next sentence? So let's take an example. Let's say I follow up Venice Beach with another short declarative sentence. And let's just choose something semi-random, but that still makes sense. Venice Beach, summer and sweat. Note what I've done here. is I've taken the first sentence, which was really just a fragment and a kind of short declarative sentence, and I followed it up with another short declarative sentence. Now, what is the effect of this decision? Well, this would give the story a little bit more abstract vibes. It would be a more abstract opening. It's almost like we have some distance from the events that are happening here. And if we look at the language itself, I'm somewhat committing to a lyrical opening here. This language and this rhythm draws attention to itself. Now, that's not inherently a bad thing. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes it's important that the language does draw attention to itself. Let's take a very famous example of this. The beginning of Lolita is one of the most famous openings in literature. And note how much this opening commits to a lyrical sound. This language draws attention to itself, and it's supposed to. We are in the voice of the main character. We are hearing the voice of the main character. Now, obviously, not every story is going to do this, and as a matter of fact, most stories don't. Language doesn't always have to draw a lot of attention to itself. So now, in keeping with this fundamental of knowing why I make a decision, I want to talk about why I'm going to choose what I choose. So if I look at my first sentence here, Venice Beach, to me, the power of this sentence, if it does have power, if I do decide to keep it, is that it is short, declarative, and bold, and that it almost seems like it doesn't have a reason for being a declaration in and of itself. Like, why are we declaring Venice Beach? To me, the point of this sentence comes from its semi-strange declarative power. Another way of saying it is I think the sentence is more fun standing on its own. And I feel like if I follow it up with something like this or any other short declarative sentence, I feel like I'm actually going to dilute what makes this sentence fun and fresh for me to begin with. So I am actually not going to start with a lyrical opening in this sense. I am not going to just describe the location, and I'm actually going to transition to something else. But again, the most important part of this is not the decision I made, it's that I know exactly why I'm doing it. I know I'm doing it because I feel like this sentence stands on its own, and I want to transition away and let this sentence have its own sort of power. So I ask myself now, what have we done in sentence one? We've given a location, but we haven't really grounded the reader. So I know that I want sentence two to immediately start building a scene, and preferably even introduce the main character. Right now I'm thinking my reader is not yet grounded. I need to ground the reader. So the first sentence might have been a little bit bold, but it wasn't very grounding. How do you ground the reader? Well, this is actually a topic I covered in a separate video, but the short answer is through your point of view character. The reader is grounded through the character itself. So I know going into this second sentence that I want to introduce my main character, I want to introduce a point of view, and I want to ground the reader. That's what I'm thinking as I approach sentence two. So let's see what I choose. So this is kind of a weird sentence, but what we have so far is Venice Beach. Marcus found his first vet lying spread-eagled sideways across the dock. Okay, now we're making some moves. Again, this is a rough draft, so I'm going to be able to play with a lot of this. Now, the first thing I want to point out here is that I named the main character. I see this mistake over and over again where a writer will say, he found his first vet. They'll use the pronoun. He found his first vet. She picked up the shovel. And the effect of that is it creates a little bit of distance between the reader and the main character. Now, sometimes you want that, but most of the time you actually don't. So unless you're specifically going for that effect, most of the time you just want to name the main character. And also, if you're going to name them eventually, there's no point in delaying it. I noticed that a lot of writers seem to think that withholding this information is somehow going to get the reader more curious about who they are. But it actually has the opposite effect. The reader relates less and less to them the more time that goes by where they don't know who this is. So when you drop a name, you make things much more specific. And remember that one of my goals in the second sentence was to ground the reader more than we did in the first. Explicitly naming the main character helps toward that goal. It allows the reader to start inhabiting the main character sooner. Now let's also look at some of the moves I'm making in this second sentence and the effects or possible effects that they have. So if we look here, Marcus found his first vet. This is a weird phrasing because the reader doesn't yet know what we're talking about when we say vet. It's actually almost guaranteed to cause a moment of confusion. It's possible my reader might even imagine that this is short for veterinarian, which would be kind of funny in this context. But it takes a little bit, probably reading the rest of the sentence before someone will think, oh, this is actually short for veteran. So why did I choose to go with vet and not just say veteran from the get-go? The main reason is that I am in Marcus's point of view, and Marcus would think vet, not veteran. Now, again, this is a first draft. I might end up changing this and just say veteran outright, and then I don't have any of that confusion. I don't cause any confusion in the reader. The question becomes, does that moment of confusion, does this kind of weird, strange sensation in the reader, does that make the sentence more interesting? These are the questions I'll ask in revision as I keep going, but even now, I'm thinking about it. Another element of this sentence is the kind of weird phrasing. Lying spread-eagled sideways across the dock. There's kind of a weird pause here with the comma. I don't yet know if I like this or not. Similar to the first sentence, actually. I don't yet know if I like it, but it does feel a little bit interesting. It's a kind of unique way to phrase this. And again, I am following my rule. I want my sentences to feel fresh, especially in a first draft. This is kind of personal to me, but I would rather swing for the fences in draft one and have to kind of pull things back a little bit as I keep going, rather than have a draft one that doesn't have any energy to it or where the sentences feel boring. Now, some people are going to work differently. Some people just want to lay down the story from draft one and they're not really thinking about the language as much, but that's not how I work. I work with language first and foremost. And this is something I've discovered over many years of writing, but it is important to discover what your process might be. So we now have two sentences, but the most important part here is that I'm making choices. I am deciding things. Now, I might not like all the effects of those choices right now. I might change these choices in revision. But the important part is if we look at these two sentences, they are 100% mine. They are my sentences. No one else would write sentences like these. And the important part is that I know why I made the decisions that I made. I'm going to talk more about this in another video, but this, knowing why you make decisions, is actually what allows you to become a better writer. Having intention behind your words, behind your sentences, makes you a better writer. It gives you a reference point to use between this is what I think is going to happen and this is what actually happened. And in that gap is where learning takes place. So these are the two sentences that I have for now. Oh, fuck it. I say we just be done. So now we have two sentences on the page, and it can kind of feel like we've done a lot of work, but now we seem to have only two sentences to show for it. But in reality, we have a lot more than two sentences. We have something far more important: guidance. We have a direction in which to go. And we know so much more about this story than two sentences would suggest. So our reader might have only two sentences, but we know so much more about the piece. And because we know so much more, we can make better decisions as we write future sentences. And what this ultimately means is that although I have only two sentences on the page right now, I have something even more important, and that's the beginnings of a voice. And it doesn't matter that we're in third person. I'm still developing an authorial voice. And I'm also developing a style. This is a separate topic, but one of the reasons style exists is because we as authors have common ways that we solve problems. We make decisions in certain ways that other people just won't. And so this decision-making process, although it's taken us a ton of time to get to just the first 2 sentences, we have way more than 2 sentences. So I'm going to have at least one more part to this, a part 3. And the goal with part 3 is going to be to start showing you how to proceed once there are sentences already in place. As always, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. But other than that, I will see you in part 3.